Hello and welcome to VR Download. Unfortunately, this is yet another pre-recorded episode just like last week. That's because we want to put this show out at a consistent time, but at the time this show is being put out this week, I will be traveling to Somnium to try Somnium VR1, the PC VR headset that the company claims has the widest undistorted field of view of any headset to date. That's a tantalizing claim, and I can't wait to check it out to find out whether it's true. But in the meantime, we decided to still run this show pre-recorded to recap the past week's news. You'll also notice that Ian isn't here. That's because Ian was unavailable for this pre-recording time. So this will be quite a strange episode where I simply recap the news that we're going to discuss, give some brief commentary, and I thought that would be better than just doing nothing at all. So I really look forward to seeing our audience in the comments again. Next week, I will be looking at the after show comments for this week. And of course, that next week and then on for the foreseeable future, the vast majority of our episodes will still be live shows with the comments with Ian and I there with you. So we're going to talk about 5 things today. We're firstly going to talk about the Quest V67 update. We talked about the public test channel build, and it revealed that you can freely position windows now. But there are also some other interesting additions in the public release of V67 that I'm excited to cover with you all. We'll then talk about what I think is the most important news this week, the fact that any Quest mixed reality app can now disable the annoying safety boundary, formerly known as Guardian. That is huge for mixed reality, and I'll discuss why. I'll briefly cover the fact that Meta has announced that August 5th will be the date when the store, the Horizon Store, formerly known as the Quest Store, will finally open up. App Lab will be gone, and they'll be adding a new early access tag to that new open store. That'll be very interesting to see. Finally, I'll talk about 2 pieces of Quest 3 news. The first is that yesterday, Meta conducted its first sale for Quest 3. It discounted the 128GB model down to $430 for a day. The second piece of news is that Meta now makes Quest 3 available financed, so paying monthly instead of upfront, a buy now, pay later scheme that also includes an extended warranty and the Quest Plus games catalog and monthly redeeming system. Let's start with Quest V67. As we discussed in a previous episode, the public test channel release of this build revealed its flagship feature, the fact that in addition to the 3 windows that you can have pinned to the system dock, you can now unpin up to 3 windows and position them freely in space. That means you can have a total of 6 windows, 3 pinned to the dock and 3 free in space. Another great addition is that the side windows pinned to the dock are now angled in towards you. They're no longer flat, because beforehand you had to actually strafe to see them well, as if you had 3 monitors set up, but they're all aligned such that they're not curved in towards you. Very strange decision. Very glad to see that that part is fixed. It's almost a significant update on its own. Now, I should note that this new windowing system, as it's called, is experimental. So you do have to enable it in the experimental settings, and there are a few little quirks. But overall, I think it's well worth it. If you're the kind of person who does use your Quest for browser windows and side-loaded 2D Android apps, and you want to do this spatial computing experience that Apple Vision Pro has popularized recently on a standalone headset that you already own or can buy for $500, that's what this now offers. Over the years, Meta has very much so been trying to expand the Quest from a games console to a general computing device, and not just a general computing device, but one that lets you have as many monitors as you want wherever you want them. And that's something that we now finally see arriving in the standalone aspect of Quest. So the other additions in Quest V67, which were not in the public test channel build, are that Quest 3 can now scan Wi-Fi QR codes. You may have seen these out at public venues, at cafes, maybe at your university. Some people have them on their router. So the idea is that instead of having to find an SSID and type in a passcode, you instead just walk up to the QR code and scan it on your phone. You know how this works. You go into the Wi-Fi settings, you type scan Wi-Fi code, kaboom. Same thing on your Quest. You go into the settings, you go to Wi-Fi, you use the headset to scan that QR code, kaboom, you're ready to go. It's a nice little quality of life addition, especially given how awkward it is to type inside a headset without a physical keyboard. The last important to note improvement in V67 is that Meta says they've improved Quest Pro's eye tracking. We saw this happen once before in the V55 update over a year ago, 8 months after Quest Pro shipped. Meta said that it improved Quest Pro's eye tracking to make it more accurate across a broader field of view and during expressions like winking. So that was a year ago. Flash forward to today, and Meta says it has made further improvements to eye tracking, though this time is not giving any specifics. It recommends recalibrating eye tracking to see these new benefits. Speculating here, I wonder if this may be arriving because Meta is working on Quest Pro 2 and it has eye tracking. And so what they found some software improvements or better ways to do eye tracking or kind of little quirks and improvements, or maybe they've even just trained the model on a larger data set now. And they've then been able to bring those improvements back down to the original Quest Pro in the meantime for the customers who do have a Meta headset out there with eye tracking, the only Meta headset or Oculus headset to ever ship to the public with eye tracking, Quest Pro. We know from the information report that Meta has been working on a Quest Pro successor since November. So I think those timelines do match up. And we talked about last week how there's also been some firmware leaks that might reveal that Quest Pro 2 could have varifocal, which is very dependent on eye tracking. So Meta would have a strong incentive to make that eye tracking as good as possible. Quest Pro only has one eye tracker per eye, only one IR camera per eye. That contrasts to some other headsets like Vision Pro, which has 2 eye tracking cameras per eye, Apple Vision Pro. So to get all the way to really high quality eye tracking, we probably will need a future Quest Pro, but it's great to see that for the people who do own a Quest Pro, they're going to get slightly improved eye tracking, especially if you're using that for PC VR foveated rendering. You want that to be as accurate as possible. Okay, now let's talk about the Meta Horizon Store, formerly the Quest Store. Meta announced multiple months ago that they're getting rid of App Lab, that unlisted system where instead of having your app findable in the search and browsable in the categories, it would be unlisted. You could find it if you searched by exact name, character for character, but it wasn't really findable in any other way. Meta announced a few months ago it's getting rid of this. It's merging App Lab into the main store, rebranding it to Horizon Store. And the news here is that we now have a date for that, August 5th. So this is going to be a major, major change to Meta's ecosystem, which until now has been this kind of console-like curated system, to become more like a mobile store, more like the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And that's going to have advantages and disadvantages, right? The developer freedom there means that the kind of small projects that Meta's curators didn't really get, and yet were really great pieces of content that people ended up loving once they did get exposed to it, they're going to get a much faster acceleration rate as they're on the same store, publicly findable as everyone else. Of course, the problem there is that if you are someone who enjoys a console-like curated experience, you come home after a hard week and you just want to find content that you know is great. You don't want to have to waste time with refunds and trials and installing stuff that sucks. You're going to have a little bit more of a difficult time. There also is the issue that the current store content is going to be competing with this flood of incoming content, including sometimes clones. I assume we'll see many clones of top titles through this. It's going to be a similar dynamic to what we see on those other stores, for better and for worse. For apps that aren't ready yet, they are in development, Meta is introducing an early access tag that you can put on your app page. So if you are a developer that is using App Lab right now, not because you're forced to, but because you want to say, my app isn't quite ready yet, you're going to get an early access tag for that purpose. Very similar to how this works on Steam. We'll talk more about this when Ian is here, and obviously on August 5th when this all starts to actually roll out. Okay, finally, let's talk about Quest 3. So there are 2 pieces of news here that are somewhat related, and they're about how Meta is handling the pricing. So the biggest problem with Quest 3 compared to its predecessor is that it launched at a much more expensive price, right? Quest 2 came in at launch at $300. Today, Quest 2 is being sold for $200, but Quest 3 arrived at $500. So $200 more expensive than Quest 2 was at launch, and more than double the current price of Quest 2. And that's obviously led to much slower sales compared to Quest 2. You can see that on Amazon. You can see that when you talk to developers. Quest 2 is still selling more headsets than Quest 3 because of that price disparity. Now, there's 2 ways that Meta seems to be trying to deal with this. One was a 1-day only sale yesterday where the 128GB model, that $500 model, was discounted down to $430. Only for 1 day. But what I think what Meta is doing here is testing, experimenting with that price elasticity. They will have watched that sale like hawks, seeing how many headsets were sold on that day compared to each other day. How much does that price matter? Because there clearly is somewhere between 300 and 500 where you get this massive volume of sales difference. John Carmack has talked about this in the past, how every $100 you reduce the price has an exponential effect on sales, not linear. But Meta doesn't know where exactly is that number for this headset Quest 3. So when you do a little sale like this, and it was only on Amazon to be clear, it's a one retailer, 1 day sale, you get a little bit of signal there to experiment. Now that's only a small piece of news there. It's a 1 day sale. I think it's an experiment. I think Meta wants to know, where does the price matter? The other bigger piece of news is that Meta now offers financing for Quest 3. So that's another way to deal with this upfront price, this $500 price, is to say, instead of paying us $500, you pay us $25 a month for 2 years. That's the price Meta is giving for this financing. And that includes Quest Plus, the games catalog system that also lets you redeem 2 games each month into your library, as long as you stay subscribed, and the Quest extended warranty, similar to Apple Care. I think it's called Meta Quest Warranty Plus. When you sum the value of these things together, you're actually paying less than you would by buying the headset up front and subscribing to Quest Plus and the warranty for 2 years. Of course, if you're only going to get the headset and not those services, it would still be cheaper to just buy the headset up front. But generally, finance is more expensive in general. $25 a month is quite reasonable for what this is, right? With Quest Plus, we've talked about before how there is this games catalog now. You do get this bunch of games. You do get every month for those 24 months, you're going to get these 2 extra games you can redeem. That could end up being really good value for some people. Now, the one thing I don't think, though, is that this is going to massively move the needle when it comes to headset sales. A lot of people make this leap that because most people finance their smartphone, right? You pay for your smartphone typically as part of your carrier contract. It's all baked into the same price. Then that means you want to sell 100 million VR headsets, we'll just offer it the same way, let people pay for it monthly. The problem is that I don't think people have the space or desire, more accurately, to do that for more than one device. You do this for your smartphone because you're buying data anyway. It's all baked into one price. I don't see the leap that people want to do this for other devices. It didn't really happen en masse for laptops and tablets. Yes, there are people who do it, but it's not the majority of why people buy these things. Didn't change the needle for games consoles, right? Most people buy their PlayStation outright. They don't buy it as part of finance. Yes, Xbox does something very similar where they offer you the Games Pass and the Xbox console for a monthly fee, but it hasn't moved the needle with Xbox either. There are certain people who this is how they pay for things. Buy now, pay later. The people who can't afford it should never really do this, but if you're financially responsible and you know you have a steady income over this time and you want to split it up, I'm sure this will lead to some headset sales. I don't think it'll move the needle. But again, I think this is all part of experimentation, right? Meta wants to see where exactly on the price line do we get this massive effect that we got with Quest 2? And does letting people pay for it over time help with that? Does bundling services help? All of these things Meta is going to be looking at closely. And I think they will be very much so basing their product decisions around Quest 4, around how this does, as well as how the Quest 3S does. That headset that all signs point to Meta releasing sometime within the next few months to replace Quest 2 directly at somewhere around $300. So they will have these 2 headsets in market, right? These 2 new headsets that should be very, very similar, right? Quest 3S should be this thing, but with the old Fresnel lenses instead of the new pancake lenses. They can then see a couple of things. Firstly, how much does the pancake lenses at $200 extra change the sales equation here? Where does it matter in terms of where we focus on quality versus where we focus on price? And secondly, just in general, what does that price matter? Do we see the same Quest 2 effect with Quest 3S? Meta is going to be asking itself all of these questions and following the data. Meta is a data-driven company. They would follow the data off a cliff if that's where it told them to go. There are advantages to following the data, and there also are disadvantages, right? One of the things you can't do with following the data is you can never go from 0 to 1. The data can get you from 1 to 2, but never from 0 to 1. And that's something I think Meta's not been so great at times. but we'll have to see how this happens with Quest 4, right? I think it's very possible that we see a Quest 4 that comes in at $400. So it's actually a midpoint between Quest 3S and Quest 3 at pricing. With Quest 3, they really went on quality. You can tell when you use this thing that it's a more expensive product than the Quest 2. It's a little bit more premium in every tiny little way. But I wonder if Meta considers that a bit of a mistake, given that we've heard Meta executives say the Quest 3 did arrive more expensive than they wanted it to be. They wanted this thing to be $400. And it's possible that in a parallel universe where they'd hit that price, they would have never bothered with Quest 3S. They would just over time bring it down. I wonder if with Quest 4, that's what we'll see. A single Quest 4, not an S, at $400. But we'll have to see. I could be completely wrong about that. They may just go with a Quest 4 and Quest 4S. And one thing I should note here is that we don't expect Quest 4 to arrive anytime soon. This is talking about far future speculation. If the same cycle that went from Quest 2 to Quest 3 follows through, we shouldn't expect a Quest 4 until 2026. So we're talking 2 years out. It's possible Meta would want to bring one out sooner in 2025. I just think it's unlikely. Quest 3 is really quite new, right? It hasn't even been out a year yet. We're still at like the 9-month mark for Quest 3. This is very much so their focus. They're still trying to get a cheaper headset out. But I think all of this is going to be a major area of experimentation for Meta to see, where does price matter? Where does quality matter? What do we want to position going forward in the future along that spectrum? Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, joining me today, I should say. I'm really looking forward to getting the audience back. This feels so strange to not have my live comments here, to not be able to see what people are saying. We really do read them every week. We base our conversation around what we're seeing in the comments. We read out comments. It feels like a much more dynamic and interactive experience to get that. I will obviously be looking at the comments below. It's strange not having Ian here. You know, I'm looking forward to having that discussion again with Ian. As I said at the start, we just wanted to put out something on Thursday at the time we said we would, so that we have something for you. I hope you enjoyed this format. I hope that I get to see you in live chat again next week. And going forward, that's how we want to keep doing the show. But again, I just wanted to have something out for you. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. Please leave your static comments below, and we will go through and look at them, as we always do, even though we do read them all. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the future.